Welcome back to American Psychotherapy, the YouTube channel where we set aside all the algorithms, we slow things down, we get on a bicycle and we spin up some thoughtful engagement about American democracy, the great heights to which it has soared, and America's current nosedive. Before we get rolling, I need to express a couple of regrets about that last ride. The first is I cussed, and cussing can't be part of the American psychotherapy experience on this channel, so I'm going to remedy that in rides to come. The second thing I want to address is some regret that I feel about referring to the guy who blocked the bike path with a Dodge Ram as a jackass. I shouldn't have done that. It was reactionary, it was thoughtless, and I can do better. Now, none of this is to say that there's never going to be cussing on here again. That might be a long shot, but I'm going to try. With that in mind, let's mount up and roll out. Today's ride is going to start out as a slow roll up a steep grade while I consider what's to come. I'm releasing this in June of 2026. We are less than a month away from the 4th of July when America is going to celebrate its 250th anniversary. And I have some regrets about how I commemorated last year. I've had some time to reflect on that, and I've got some fresh thoughts about an approach for this year that will hopefully lead to a better outcome and a brighter outlook in 2026. Look, folks, like I said, this is going to be a slow uphill slug at first. Stick around, though. On the downhill part of this ride, it's going to be stunning scenery. But it might be appropriate, this slow roll, for the first part of this video, because I'm going to tell you about what the first 6 months of 2025 did to my attitude. It felt to me like a daily assault on American democracy, on Article 1 of the Constitution, on separation of powers, on the checks and balances of those powers. If you were an immigrant accused of no crime, your safe places were under assault. Churches, courthouses, weddings, funerals, due process, freedom of the press came under assault, as did Congress' power of the purse. In February, we saw an ugly thing unfold in the Oval Office between our president, our vice president, and the president of Ukraine. That sick scene was an outright assault on post-World War II Allied security. Our institutions of higher learning came under assault, as did the visa applications of foreign students. The emoluments clause. The list goes on. The relationships we have with our best friends and neighbors, it was all under assault. Free trade around the world, renewable energy, public health, diplomacy, equal protection. The list just doesn't end. The least and most vulnerable among us were under assault. By the 4th of July, 2025, I was in no mood to gather with three-time Trump voters still supporting Donald Trump. Gather with them, break bread with them, share treats with them, and hear them pray over the food, thanking God for this choice land in which we live and the freedoms we enjoy, and then overhearing talking points pulled from Fox News and conservative talk radio. I wasn't going to have any of that. The assaults on American democracy from 2025 have not ceased in 2026. Not hardly. In fact, they've picked up pace. And as I approach the upcoming Independence Day that is going to commemorate America's 250th birthday, I've taken some time to reflect on my approach this year. And I've come to the conclusion that it would be a grave disservice for me not to take note of and observe and celebrate those who conceived our nation all those years ago, those who freed it from a tyrant king, and those who eventually penned what became the greatest political experiment in human history. And I am a thankful beneficiary of that experiment. So I've changed my tune. I am going to celebrate Independence Day 2026. Folks, this is the time in our ride where there's a turning point, and we're going to turn our attention to focus on causes for celebration this coming Independence Day. See, despite America's current widespread corruption at the highest levels of its government, despite America's currently transactional relationships with its own people, its friends, and its allies, and despite all that's been lost because of those things, America has not yet forfeited its foundational political architecture of self-governance. America has but temporarily lost sight of its founding principles and the operational template laid out in its founding documents. Among those founding documents is the Declaration of Independence, the very reason America celebrates Independence Day. 250 years ago, colonists dared defy a king by politically punching that king's authority in the mouth. Day by day, over time, British colonists gradually came to conclude that the king they once supported had evolved to become an abusive, arrogant, self-serving tyrant. And day by day, over time, British colonists evolved to accept and embrace a new identity, that of American revolutionaries. The Declaration of Independence did not establish American democracy, but it did forge American patriots from former loyalists to a king. 11 years from now, in September of 2037, Americans will hopefully be celebrating the 250th birthday of American democracy. But for next month, we the people, including me this year, will gratefully be celebrating America's independence from a tyrant. When America's founders declared independence from their king, they told him precisely why. They declared with boldness an assertion of their own rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, rights which they viewed as supreme over and independent of any king's authority. They set forth in detail, and they condemned a long list of their king's history of abuses, despotism, usurpations, and absolute tyranny. They openly condemned their king for his refusal to acknowledge their elections, for his obstruction of laws over the naturalization of foreigners, for his obstruction of justice within the colonies, for sending swarms of officers to harass the people, for keeping his armies among the colonists without their consent, for rendering his military powers independent of the people's civil colonial power, for protecting his troops from punishment for the murders they committed, for cutting off colonial trade with the rest of the world, for depriving colonial residents of trial by jury, for fundamentally altering the form and function of colonial governance, and for inciting domestic insurrections among them. If you haven't read the Declaration of Independence recently, I hope you'll reread it to celebrate America's independence this year. Read how America's founders called their king unworthy to head a civil nation and a tyrant unfit to rule a free people. Folks, the parallels are not few between 1776 and 2026. I challenge every American to get out this Independence Day and celebrate America's independence from a tyrant king. And I challenge you to vocally and peacefully resist the abuses and outright corruption of a would-be self-styled American king today. Happy Independence Day, everybody. Thanks for coming along. I hope you'll join us again for our next psychotherapy bike ride, and I'll tell you what's on my mind then.